Family, it's your favorite queer radio personality, Anna DeShawn here, and I recently had the opportunity of interviewing Brandon Johnson. He's a mayoral candidate currently in a runoff with Paul Vallas. They've had plenty of forums, but I wanted to hear from y'all. I wanted to hear from you about what questions you had for Brandon. Y'all overwhelmed me, okay? I got phone calls and text messages, plenty of comments. So I tried to get to as many as I could. I was only given 10 minutes, but I took 15, okay? So I hope that you all enjoy this interview, and I hope it encourages you to not sit this election out. This is only on E3 Radio, your number one stop for queer radio done right. Family, you already know this is your favorite queer radio personality, Anna DeShawn here, only on E3 Radio, your favorite stop for queer radio done right. And today, I'm really excited to be in conversation with mayoral candidate Brandon Johnson. What's going on, Brandon?
Hey, everything is well. Looking forward to the conversation and looking forward to becoming the next mayor of the city of Chicago.
Okay, I hear you. Yes, indeed. You've been working hard. There's been lots of forums. I've seen all the ads, all the good things. And I'm excited to be in conversation today because I actually went to the community, right? And asked them, what do y'all want to know from Brandon? And I got overwhelmed with questions in the best possible way. And so I'm excited to dig in a little bit more into your platform and really give you an opportunity to tell folks why you're different, why they should come out and vote, and why this election matters. Sound good?
That works for me. It's perfect.
So one question that came up actually a couple of times between all the social platforms was about public safety, right? And that's typically really top of mind for so many of us. And when people hear defund the police, they like, how you handling public safety? Are we defunding the police? Can you tell the good people what that actually looks like for you on your platform and how that's actually going to impact their everyday life?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, I'm not defunding the police. I mean, this is a Republican strategy that is used often. The same Republican Party that said that President Biden was going to defund the police, the same Republican Party that said that Governor Pritzker was going to defund the police, it's the same Republican Party that's accusing me of wanting to defund the police. It's a lie. What I've said repeatedly is that in order for us to have a safe community, we have to make sure that our approach is comprehensive. You know, I live in a beautiful community, and it is one of the more violent neighborhoods. I live on the west side in Austin. You know, we live this every day. So what I've said, we have to get at the immediate crisis. And the way we do that is we train and promote 200 more detectives. We're not solving crime in Chicago, particularly in black and brown communities. We're talking about a clearance rate that is less than 20%. And so, you know, we have to make sure that we are actually solving violent crime. We also have to make sure that we are implementing the consent decree, of which some of that reform that we're looking for as a community gets addressed within the consent decree. My public safety plan spends to actually invest in the consent decree. Same thing with 200 more detectives to solve crime. We also have to make sure that we are implementing not just the consent decree, but we are enforcing the laws that are already on the books, like our red flag laws. People who get guns who shouldn't have them. We don't manufacture guns in Chicago, but yet they're flowing through our streets. I've also called for the immediate hiring of young people and not just summer hiring jobs. I'm talking about year-round positions because it's really about prevention. We can hire and double the amount of young people we hire immediately once I become mayor. All the data proves that violence reduction is attributed to youth employment, and so that's why I'm committed to doing it. The bottom line is, in order to have a public safety plan, you have to invest in it, and that's what I'm committed to doing. The last thing is, of course, mental health services for police officers, as well as, you know, the 911 calls that of which 40% of them are mental health crises. Having a comprehensive response to public safety is what we need. It's not about just being tough. It's about being smart. And so as a public school teacher, I believe in planning. And that's what I'm going to do as mayor of the city of Chicago, is plan to make sure that public safety is not just a top priority, but we're implementing strategies that actually work.
Got it. And you touched on something that also came up in the questions, and it was around mental health centers, especially reestablishing them inside the communities. Do you have a plan for that?
Absolutely. I fought the previous administration when he closed them. I fought this administration when she refused to reopen them. I'm committed to reopening our mental health centers. I had an older brother that had untreated trauma. He died addicted and unhoused. Look, many of the services that are required in order to save people's lives are certainly attributed to being able to provide mental health support services. And that's why I'm committed to passing treatment, not trauma. It's an alternative. Instead of police officers alone showing up um, with only one tool, when a mental health crisis occurs, we need to make sure that we have trained professionals that know how to actually um, respond to the crises, right? But it's also about making sure that our law enforcement has mental health support as well. That's also part of the consent decree. So, mental health centers, of which we need to have 24-hour care, because it's a matter of life and death in too many instances. And I want to make sure that we are protecting lives. And we do that by actually investing in mental health services. And I'm committed to doing that. It's what I've done as a Cook County Commissioner. It's what I fought for as a teacher and an organizer. And it's certainly what I'm going to do and lead as mayor of the city of Chicago.
So as I hear you, right, we're talking about hiring young people, investing in mental health centers in our communities. I mean, I think these are all things that we can get behind. Now, what also folks have brought up is this idea that they've heard that you're going to raise taxes to get some of this stuff done. Can you speak to, are you raising taxes?
So I'm not raising property taxes because that's been the lazy, sloppy approach that administration after administration continues to do. Since 2011, $1.2 billion on taxes, fines, and fees, particularly property taxes. That's how the budget has been handled. There's a structural deficit that was caused by my opponent when he worked with Republicans in Springfield to take a dedicated revenue stream for retirement security, gave it to the general fund, and every single administration up until 2017 used those resources irresponsibly, and they continue to place the burden on working people and middle class families. What my budget plan does, I'm the only person in this race that has ever put forth a budget plan because I believe in telling people the truth, and we have to talk about how we got here. My opponent has ruined the economy, not just here in Chicago, but everywhere he has gone. And so I'm going to eliminate the structural deficit that he caused. I'm going to make up to $1 billion of new investments because that's how we have a safe city. And then I'm going to make sure we do it without raising property taxes, without doing that. And yes, I'm asking those with means, the ultra rich, our corporations have to put more skin in the game in order to attract and make sure that we have strong businesses, in order to make sure that our families stay here. We have to address the violent crime in the city of Chicago. And the way we address it, of course, is by making sure that we're making critical investments. So I'm not placing the burden on working people. And yes, I'm asking large corporations to put some more skin in the game because they benefited from tax breaks, tax loopholes. 70% of large corporations in 2022 did not pay a corporate tax. 70%. I mean, think about how many hundreds of millions of dollars that we are losing and hundreds of millions of dollars that are being placed on the backs of working people. I come out of a working class family. I'm not going to burden the working class family to balance this budget and we get no return on that investment. We're going to protect working class people. We're going to, excuse me, we're going to protect middle class families. And that's what my budget plan does. It is balanced, it's structurally responsible, and it makes sure that we do not burden everyday people.
I love to hear that. I'm sure my listeners love to hear that as well. And we had a question come in. I think it wraps back around to what you were mentioning earlier. The question says, can you explain the statement in your campaign that says big cities are successful when they invest in its people? Can you explain or provide an example of a city that's done this and exactly how you plan to do that?
Yeah, so look, when you look at places like Boston that have recovered faster than the city of Chicago, you look at places like New York, Los Angeles. I mean, you can look at cities right here, like Oak Park, for instance. Oak Park has three public libraries that are open till 9 o'clock. They have, a public health system. They have two school districts. I mean, I can go on and on. I mean, they invest in people. But Boston, Los Angeles, New York, Houston, all of these cities are recovering a lot faster because they're investing in people. The challenge we have, though, is it's becoming more and more unaffordable. And so that's why my comprehensive plan about investing in people does not come at the expense of every single day, everyday people. So we know it works because there are examples all over the country. As I just mentioned, those three larger cities. What we have to do in the city of Chicago, we have to make sure that our investments do not lead to the type of rampant gentrification that makes it difficult for people who are indigenous to these various communities. They should be able to afford to live in the very communities that have been disinvested in. And as we invest in them, they can't be pushed and forced out. And you're seeing that with property taxes, Pilsen, Little Village, communities around the city, that are being um, pillaged essentially because of property taxes and violence. My plan addresses both of those dynamics.
Thank you for that, which also triggered another question when we talk about gentrification and improvements and investing in people, right? We have the Obama Library coming, right? And there's been huge debate on property taxes in that area, what it looks like for people who lived in that area. How are we, or how do you plan on managing the people who have natively lived in that area for so long, and we help ensure that they remain there and get to reap the benefits, right, of all of this economic upturn that's actually going to happen in that area?
No, it's a great question, and that's been the problem in Chicago. That community development finally arrives, and the very people who have been divested in don't get to benefit from it. And that's why I put forth the budget plan. It's comprehensive, where we eliminate the structural deficit. We make the investments without raising property taxes. I'm the only person who's committed to that. My opponent, he's already told you he's going to raise property taxes. He said it 4 years ago, and the situation is worse than what it was 4 years ago. What I'm committed to doing is making sure that there are more affordable housing units, that the economic development that we want to push in housing and the vacancy that exists all around the city of Chicago, we can create jobs, we can create a pathway to home ownership, and we can keep our communities safe, because that is the greatest predictor. If you look at the data in terms of prevention, when you make those investments, you save lives. It's not overly complicated here. It's a matter of having a leader that loves people enough that's willing to invest in them. And that is absolutely what guides my passion, what guides my intellect, and what drives my purpose, is that loving people enough to invest in them. And as people prepare to vote, they should know that Brandon Johnson is someone who has collaborated as a teacher, as an organizer, as a Cook County commissioner, who's been responsible for billions of dollars, making critical investments without having to raise property taxes. We have the largest universal basic guaranteed income program in the entire country, of which 70% of the recipients are women. We can eliminate up to $1 billion of medical debt, and we have put over $100 million into violence prevention, as well as workforce development. I've done the work. I'm committed to the work, and that's why investments are so critical, and that's why I'm eagerly desiring to have the support and the votes of the people of Chicago, because our promises get to be as big as the city of Chicago. And I'm committed to investing in people. It is a matter of life and death. And I believe that it's worth fighting for, to make sure that we are saving lives and people actually have a quality of life.
Absolutely. I believe Chicago is worth fighting for too. Here at E3 Radio, we're big supporters of the Chicago Therapy Collective. And during Mayor Lightfoot's term, right, there was a huge initiative that she signed off on called Hire Trans Now. And some of my listeners want to know if you're going to hold on to that structure and continue to invest in Hire Trans Now and that entire campaign to ensure that there's equity in the mayor's office and in the city of Chicago when it comes to hiring, especially LGBTQ folks.
Absolutely. And an entire office dedicated to the LGBTQ plus community. When it comes to Black trans women in particular, we're talking about one of the most vulnerable groups of people in our city and, quite frankly, in our country. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that we are protecting and affirming and protecting and supporting and hiring Black trans women. Know that electing me as mayor, you're going to have someone who sees you and values you and is willing to invest in you, and more importantly, learn from you. Because ultimately, I believe in the collaborative approach to governance and co-governance. Our issues are too great to rely on one individual or only certain people groups to determine how we actually revive our city. I'm very much committed to building the type of coalition that will ultimately provide a city of Chicago that works for everyone. I wholeheartedly believe and I know that there's enough for everyone in the city. And that's what I'm fighting for. And that's what that's what I'm committed to doing as mayor of the city of Chicago. And I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak to your audience today. You've been wonderful.
Thank you so much for joining us, Brandon. We wishing you the best of luck here at E3 Radio. And family, I appreciate all your questions. All right, stay close. You already know we are Queer Radio done right.